We are going to begin today on our painting of the planet on a pre-painted black canvas. I let it fully dry, and with a large round-headed brush, which is slightly damp. I'm kind of drawing around my planet first with this brush, just to get an idea of where I want to apply my blue and the light and space that's going to be coming out of it. Sometimes, if you're not entirely sure of where you want to plot color, you just use a damp brush and use the water on it to kind of draw what you think you might want before committing to the actual pigment. So from there, I'm applying this mixture of titanium white and primary blue, and I'm doing so initially with a streaking motion, and then I'm tapping it outwards. So the idea is that the pigment closest to the earth is going to be the brightest and the most blue, and then as we move towards the outskirts, it gets much darker. Here you can see yet again, I used a streaky motion to apply the pigment, and now I'm blending it out with this tapping motion. What this is going to do is, in later steps, imply light and imply stars in the vast distance. On the topic of stars, we're going to apply our first layer of them using a small liner brush and some titanium white. As you can see, I'm just working around my planet, applying a litany of these little dots. However, you'll probably notice that this is taking quite a long time and that all of our stars look identical. This is an issue when painting this sort of thing, because if you know about painting nature, you know that we need to have a lot of intricacies, a lot of very random occurrences, right? So here what I'm doing is I'm taking that same brush, a lot of water, peeling back the bristles and launching paint at the canvas. This is fantastic for stars, this is fantastic for snow, and as you can see, we now have a litany of very different stars. There are different sizes, they're different shapes, they are in different clusters. And that's really what's going to add a lot of interest to the background there. Then I'm going to take a primary blue and a tiny bit of titanium white and begin working on the oceans in our planet. I'm using a square-headed brush from Artist's Loft, and I'm scraping the canvas with the brush. I don't want a fully smooth aesthetic here, and I don't want something that's a pure blue. That's a mistake a lot of us make when we begin. We want everything to look perfect. However, the water, it's going to have dips in it, right? Different portions of it are going to be at different depths. So you're going to want some of that black to show through to a point, because that's really going to imply a lot of depth in your water. It's going to do a lot of work for you. You don't have to blend any additional colors. Just make sure that certain portions of your water look a little bit darker, a little bit more choppy. And this is going to add a lot of additional realism to what you're working on and make it a lot more interesting, right? Because just think about the water as a flat surface. If it were just a solid blue, it would look really, really boring. And this is a way to make it much more interesting. So from there, using that same brush, I'm now taking some burnt umber and a mixture of primary yellow and primary blue, and I'm applying our land masses. Now, much like the water, I'm not applying too much paint, and I'm letting some of the black underneath show through. The brush here doesn't have any water on it, it is not damp, and that's because I want to render sort of a gritty effect as we continue. I want you to see the grit of the canvas, I want to see the black underneath, and this is going to imply more inconsistencies in the land masses themselves. You don't want to blend all of these colors perfectly, and you want them to be different from each other, ever evolving, right? Because that's what the land is. It has some areas that are higher, some that are lower, some of different geography and weather. So just keep that in mind. Just try to make all of your land as different as possible while still being cohesive. From there, I'm using the same brush, taking some titanium white and applying both our north and south pole. I'm applying a lot of that titanium white to the top, then I kind of blend it down in a gritty motion, much like we did the water and the land masses. Then I'm taking more titanium white, applying it to the brighter edge of our earth, and I'm blending it inwards into the blue of the ocean. The blue should still be fairly wet to a point, so this is an easy transition, and as you can see, we have a hard white edge on one side, and then a nice subtle transition from the white to the blue. Then I'm going to take my small liner brush, the same one that I used for my stars, and I'm going to begin implementing some clouds. Now when we do these clouds, it's important to remember that they're all going to be very different from one another. You should kind of scribble in the first ones and use a good amount of water with your white initially, because you do want these clouds to be fairly see-through, right? And we can apply different areas of the clouds that are going to be more transparent than others. But the idea is that you can still see portions of the landmass and portions of the water underneath it. Then, in varying areas, you can take more pure white and add that on top. But the whole idea here is that you get something that gives it an extra dimension. It's working on top of the water and of the land, and it kind of draws them together, right? So as you can see, portions of this are going to be done with a lot of water, portions of it are going to be more gritty, and we're just trying to create a lot of difference and interesting little techniques with it. From there, I'm going to begin applying the darker side of our planet, and I'm doing so with a pure black paint and a good amount of water on our square-headed brush. I'm using a lot of water because I don't want a harsh edge from black to our planet. I want a very subtle transition. I want to see through portions of this black and see our land masses and our clouds and our water underneath it, right? Just as we can right now. It's not a harsh line, it's a subtle gradient and transition from one to the other. So our planet's coming along pretty nicely here. But we're going to go back in and add some additional highlights to our white areas. I'm doing so with a liner brush, and I'm doing it because acrylic paint generally dries fairly transparently and darker. So when you're working with highlights with colors like yellow, white, orange, you'll generally have to go back and apply a couple of different layers just to ensure you get the brightness that you really want. Acrylic painting really is something that does require layers, so don't get discouraged if it doesn't look great immediately. Sometimes even the best artist has to go back and apply additional highlights and that sort of thing. I'm then blending out portions of that white on the edge and kind of creating a glow from the planet, but I'm also ensuring that that harsh white edge still remains the same. You don't want the planet to blend out completely, but you do want that light that's kind of reflecting off it and being emitted. And that's going to kind of create a very cohesive blending tissue between the planet and space. Then I'm taking my small liner brush and creating more additional stars. Sometimes we add a plethora of something and we think that's enough. And then we work on something else and we think, no, we could use more. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Now, I'm being very, very careful working around my planet, making sure that I don't apply the stars on top of it. And as you can see, I just messed up. And I included that to show you that it happens to all of us. It is just fine. We can fix it. And we're doing that by simply taking additional black with a good amount of water and reapplying it in the same way that we did the first time. It might be a little bit more difficult around the rest of the planet, but as you can see, it is doable, it is achievable. So if you have to go back and add more stars, there are ways around it. But it's generally best to work on your background first and then move to your foreground. That way you don't have to work around the intricacies that the foreground generally holds, because the background is generally much more simple and easier to work on top of. Then I'm adding a sun in the background. It's very small, it's very subtle, but I think the sizing will look well and complement the stars. Then for the final 30 or so seconds, I'm just adding additional highlights to our earth. Now, this is kind of incredible. This is a first. I I think this is our first 10-minute painting where we actually finished in 10 minutes. So I think that's good. We are about 4 months in, so it was bound to happen sometime. But there we have it. Now I'm just adding on a bunch of additional little clouds. It's very see-through pigment because I do want different types of clouds. Remember, inconsistency is your best friend when you're painting. So there we have it, our finished painting at that 10-minute mark. And if you're new to acrylic painting, if you'd like to learn more, you can find a link in the description to my book, Acrylic Painting for Beginners. And of course, I post every Saturday. I hope to see you next Saturday. Thank you so much for watching, and above all, stay creative.